Country, we got to be realistic. In a country which is attracting between $1 to $2 billion of foreign direct investment a year, you got to double that. Rather than for your political positioning, you call things game changer or lives will be changed. It doesn't work. Pakistan's economy for years have developed on political and state patronage. There is a relationship of patronage with the current business elite, which doesn't let that happen. On trouble again and again for aid and fee money is not Pakistan's future.
Everything now starts at home.
Yeah. People don't respect you. That's what I'm
by putting the house in order. Hello and welcome to InferTalks, a podcast where I put you in the room with some of the biggest thought leaders from around the world. Today, to speak on the possibility of foreign investment in Pakistan, I'm joined by one of the leading experts and practitioners in the field, Mr. Haroon Sharif, former Minister of State and Chair Board of Investments. He's currently advising different governments of Arab Gulf and China, along with large private investors. Mr. Haroon, welcome to InferTalks.
Well, thank you for having me here. Pleasure to be here.
All right, Mr. Haroon, let's start off our conversation. And the first question that I really want to ask you is basically about the news that actually came last month, where Saudi Arabia had actually expressed its intention of investing around $25 billion worth dollars of investment in Pakistan. We're expected to have elections next year in February. There's still a lot that needs to be told in terms of how that goes. But let me ask you, how confident are you as someone who continues to advise foreign governments, and especially from the region, that investments like these are not likely to face the kind of bottlenecks that they had in the past?
Well, important question. We need to first understand that why this interest from Gulf is rising. So one of the things is that they are diversifying their risk, particularly after COVID, where they actually lost a lot of money in real estate in the West, in the hoteling and other business. So now as their Vision 2030, they want to put money in the region so that their risks go down. So it's a commercial decision, economic decision, which has been taken. Now, it's not a new interest in Pakistan. They have always been interested in Pakistan. And basically, all the deals, frankly, which I had structured or agreed with them, it is the continuation of the same. Unfortunately, Pakistan has not been able to close the transactions. Now, with this SIFC, we are trying to speed up, and I pray and wish Pakistan that we could close the transaction and take some of this money. These numbers are irrelevant because that's an intention that, okay, we allocate X billion dollars for Pakistan. But once you translate these numbers into actual projects and transactions and research and feasibilities are done, then you get to know what is the real quantum. I advise of all my political friends that stop making these big populist statements of numbers. What sells in the world is even very small transaction which you have actually done. So we need to focus on that. From the Saudi intention, we managed to do some of the quick transactions, and the quickest transactions is that give them a strategic stake in our companies which are already operating in profits. Sell shares through stock market, disinvest some of the things, rather than creating a new greenfield project, which will take 5 to 10 years of period, and the political patience runs out in that period. So if Pakistan manages to put some, deals with Saudi Arabia, I think the door will open up, the interest will be widened. It's not only Saudi Arabia, others will be interested that Pakistan can actually offer a commercial value proposition.
And what are some of the lessons that you have learned, your colleagues might have also learned, by virtue of your experience and experience of others, that what were some of the mistakes that do not have to be repeated again? Or perhaps, what is it that can be done differently to not face the kind of predicaments that were faced the last time or in previous encounters?
Usama, there are 3-4 very clear messages. First of all, for years, Pakistan's mindset When I say Pakistan, it is the policymakers and bureaucracy both. The mindset has been that basically we will use our geopolitical positioning to get economic gains. Okay? So at times we were very relevant, then became less relevant, and these days we are kind of left out in the open. Second is the mindset of borrowing, that we keep on borrowing money from multilaterals and others, even these bailouts from bilaterals. It is borrowing. So mindset is borrow some money and buy some time. Now these what I call is a transactional approach towards economic management, which gives you a breathing space, but it does not give you sustainability in the medium term. What is needed at the moment is that Pakistan, first of all, we should stop talking very big. You know, hundreds of $1 billion in a country, we got to be realistic. In a country which is attracting between $1 to $2 billion of foreign direct investment a year, you got to double that. Rather than for your political, positioning, you call things game changer or, lives will be changed. It doesn't work that way. So what we need to do is, again, we need to prioritize few transactions and policies and basically insulate those policies from bureaucracy. That's the critical word. A, there is no competence there to do the deals. B, there is no will there to do the deals.
And why is that the case?
I will come to that. That's a very key question. Pakistan's economy for years have developed on political and state patronage. There is a relationship of patronage with the current business elite, which doesn't let that happen because they get threatened. When the new people come in who are much bigger than them, who have global knowledges and they have competitive edge, the local, set who have been developing their business through tax incentives, subsidies, protection, rent seeking, they get threatened. So my advice to my previous boss, Prime Minister, was the same. Insulate 4 projects. Give it to me in a space where we can bring best minds like investment bankers, economists, engineers, lawyers, because our legal side is very weak when we go into international contracting. Look at Rakodak, look at Karke. We end up in disputes because we have very weak legal arrangements. Put the best minds which are available, pay them. Nothing works for free. And give them deadlines, and I can guarantee they will deliver you something. I have seen it in many countries. UK did it, Bangladesh did it, Cambodia did it, Vietnam did it. They put up a delivery unit and then directly reports to the Prime Minister, and that unit has a professional setup for a time being. Once it's done, the deal is done, these guys disappear. But if you put it in the bureaucracy, which is struggling to even perform their core duty, that is where it frustrates the partners and investors. Having said that, fast tracking does not mean that you do not do proper diligence or you do distress sales or you don't put the right asset pricing. I would caution. And frankly speaking, international institutions have started cautioning on that side, that don't do things in the haste, do proper competitive biddings. It's a public asset. You can't really throw it away, So we need to be cognizant of that in the volatility in Pakistan, that we need to take a professional approach, and professionalism you buy from the market.
Right. And let me ask you a question. You said we need to have temporary arrangements, teams that are empowered enough to basically get the job done. And then we hand it over to the mainstream system itself. But then the problem is, if you have the same bureaucracy, the foreign investors end up running into similar kind of bottlenecks, or they end up exploring a whole set of complex issues that they might have to navigate or might have to confront. How would you then advise a change in attitude or way of doing things so as to ensure that the foreign investor does not have to deal with those nuisances?
Change of mindset takes generations. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a change management process. What I am advocating is something different. at this point, Pakistan, people don't trust us that we can actually do a good business transaction. That's where I'm saying take a transactional, opportunistic way of gathering people who can deliver these transactions for you. I think for Pakistan's medium to long-term solution, it lies that we need to depoliticize a lot of economics. As long as the political influences keep on coming, the politician's job eventually they need to learn is that they need to make a policy. And I give you a very concrete example. These days there's a lot of talk of privatization. Okay? I think privatization is not an economic policy. Economic policy decision is that state from now onwards will not run commercial enterprises.
So what kind of decision is that? If it's
That's
not
a
economic?
policy shift, right?
All right.
That we have 200 companies, we don't want to run it.
All right.
Now there are 7, 8 ways to implement that policy, and privatization is one of those. You can do multiple things. You can contract out, you can change the boards of directors, you can just basically unbundle companies, you can privatize, you can, so that leave it to experts.
So you were basically saying it's just basically an alternative out of a set of different alternatives.
Set of things. Privatization actually is an old phenomenon.
All right.
It was in fashion in 70s and 80s, and it has mixed results. It hasn't really delivered that, because it's not that you are doing it for making money. You want enterprises to be run efficiently,
Right.
to contribute to the economy. But our experience in PTCL and KESC
Yeah.
hasn't really told us that.
Yeah.
But let me close on something very important here. So if politicians take only policy space and stop making the overheads and bridges and roads and transactions, who does the micromanagement and, nuts and bolts? These are the institutions which need to be given independence. Privatization Commission was never a ministry, Usama. It was an auction house under the law. We converted into a ministry to create some jobs for bureaucrats and to give job to a minister. Planning Commission was never a ministry. You got to get minds there as a technical body. Board of Investment was never a ministry. It's been captured by bureaucracy because of multiple reasons. We need to free them, put a CEO, give them targets, and basically oversee them. Don't micromanage it.
Right.
That's my message. Delegate. At the moment, each an appointment of a general manager of railways to PCB chairman, it comes to cabinet. What business cabinet has to get into micromanaging these bodies? Give it to a world-class headhunter. They should appoint people. That's how modern progressive world operates.
So that's basically what you're suggesting. And suggesting is that how actually the bureaucratic inertia sort of sets in when we do things like these, the way we've been doing. Let me then,
It's an inertia plus incompetence.
right. And then now let me actually come to this question about, the possibility of privatization of PIA and, power distribution companies. Do you think then, as you've explained, is the right kind of alternative for, these public or state-owned enterprises which have been running losses for years now at a stretch? Do you think that is the right kind of alternative for them?
To me, the right kind of approach would be that fine, our government has appointed a financial advisor. The question to financial advisor should be, what is the best way to take this enterprise out of the losses? What is the objective? Objective is that taxpayers, yours and my money, should not be paying off the losses of inefficiencies of the state, right? So we don't want to pay budget for PIA's losses. Second is that bureaucracy and the government should be hands-off and it should be run professionally, right? Now, for that, you should ask the financial advisor that what are the 3-4 choices I have? What China has done is they have not privatized, they have kept the ownership. They have just given these companies, China Railways, China, real estate, and they have given it to the professionals and said, we will not interfere, but you got to give us a result, right? So it's up to the financial advisor to tell them that, okay, unbundle this company, sell this part, own this part, outsource this part. My worry is that bureaucracy and politics, when they try and do these deals themselves, I have seen it, I have been sitting in Economic Coordination Committee of the government and others. Very professional reports have been done on Steel Mill, Roosevelt Hotel, PIA, but now we don't even go back to those reports and we reinvent the process. So we need to respect professionals, seek their advice, and delegate it to them to deal with it.
Now, speaking of reinvention of the process itself, because the reason why I asked, and you said, much of the task needs to be delegated to the financial advisor. But then the question is, when you have an election, you have a new government, whatever government comes in, you know the political economy side of things far better than anyone else in this room. And we've seen things go haywire. Whenever new government sets in, it sort of, wants to do the things the way it wants to. And then it has a lot of political capital invested in some of these, very state-owned enterprises that might have to be, either privatized or done away, by way of different interventions. Then let me ask you, how do you then sort of ensure that they actually divorce it from the, populist inclinations as they might do otherwise?
Look, it's very clear. Our elite, the ruling elite particularly, they need to take now a few difficult decisions. You cannot continue to run the country the way you have been, frankly. There aren't many players who will come and bail you out. You cannot borrow more money. Your debt to GDP is all-time high anyways. Interest rate is high. If you borrow locally, you repay 24% to the banks. Your tax collection has gone down because economic growth is 2%. So you don't have many choices. When you don't have many choices, you need to take a couple of serious decisions and sacrifice. So first of all, they need to let the control go on few things. That's what I'm saying. Delegate few things to the market professionals. Let them deal with it. They can do it much better than you do, okay? And second part is very critical, that focus on continuity of policy so that people trust you. What you are saying is, with the change of government, suddenly it gives jitters to investors. I don't know what they're thinking. Although we know all the politicians and all the rulers what they are thinking. But still, somebody comes because institutions are weak and individuals dominate. So their likings, their dislikings do matter. So we need to at least give autonomy to one or two key economic institutions where you appoint somebody for 5 years, somebody professionally sound who inspires confidence of the market. People will start trusting your country that, okay, there's a change in the politics. Politics will remain volatile. You might get another weak coalition government. But this institution is strong enough to talk to, and they have the delegated power to deal with it. The problem occurs then we try and capture what we call so-called elite capture, these institutions for vested interests. And then we make these institutions weak and incompetent, and people bypass the institutions and try and do deals with individuals. That's where things start getting, and we have countless examples, of that thing. My personal example, now I advise, the regional countries. The biggest question these days is that how to de-risk the investment. And that links to what you're saying. There's a risk factor. One thing which not many people understand in Pakistan, the kind of money which is Gulf countries are looking for is not for development projects. This is the sovereign wealth funds of these oil-producing countries who are looking to maximize their reserves. So they are looking for a dollar-based higher yield than what they are earning in the West. It is not the money which will necessarily create jobs, some jobs, but it's not focused on that. It's focused on a commercial return. It is not the money which will transfer technology. It is not the money which will raise your exports. They are looking for deals where they can make money. Now it's up to us. Can we tailor those deals towards our advantage? that while they make money, now Pakistan has 4 fault lines to me for any economic policy or transaction. I'm mentioning these words again and again because we are very weak on policy. We are into transactions. So once the first thing as an economic policy maker is that we got to give jobs to 2.5 million boys and girls coming in the labor market every year. So investment should be job creating. Second, we're short of dollars. So investment should create dollars, i.e. exports. Thirdly, our productivity and production both are very low, so we are import dependent. So it should bring in enough technology which can increase the value addition which is needed in my country. And fourthly, I need investment which takes me to the knowledge economy where returns are much higher and the future lies there. If you apply these 4 filters to each transaction or policy, I can assure you the results would be far superior. But to do that, you need to bring in people who understand that. The current lot we have unfortunately not invested in the people in the state who understand these things better and are equipped to actually do those deals.
So, Mr. Sharif, then the question is, what sectors are, Arab Gulf countries are really interested in terms of, investing their foreign capital? And then at the same time, how do you make sure that, you sort of intertwine those areas where these 4 policy areas that you've actually identified sort of also get satisfied in the process?
Look, Gulf countries, as I said, they have knowledge or expertise in oil-related industry, obviously. So oil and gas and energy. And these things are needed in Pakistan, but we need alternate energy, not the oil-based energy. Secondly, Saudis are quite interested in mining, which is extractive industry, and there's no harm in it. But you got to see that the 4 filters I have given, it might not tick all 4. A little bit of 1 or 2, the labor-oriented job creation, right? UAE and others, Qataris, they're quite keen on aviation and ports and transport and these kind of, and trade logistics, But these are mostly services. It's not manufacturing. You got to understand that. So we need, China is our friend who wants to do manufacturing here, right? There are lots of industries which have become expensive in China who are willing to relocate here, right? But their model is through economic zones. That's how they operate, right? This money which is coming, this would actually look for either large chunks of lands or mines or shares of existing companies where they can make money. That's the Gulf money. So we got to understand the dynamics of different investments. Now, China is trying to relocate production. China, through BRI, is trying to create markets where they can sell their products. So we need very sharp minds now to have an industrial and services policy. And that policy should look at the regional dynamic. There's no money left for us in the US or the European markets and others. The liquidity is in Asia. But in Asia, the incentives of investors are different. The time has gone when people used to come and make feasibility studies and buy land and make factories. These ICIs, Unilevers. Now they want locals to do it. In fact, our local private sector, there's a great demand that if they want to expand. But there's a very interesting phenomena I would like to share. I have taken, without naming, one of the largest company in the sports manufacturing. And I took them to Qatar before the World Cup because, that was the time. And they have an offer from a global name to basically set up more than $1 billion worth of expansion into sports goods. Okay? And I introduced them to the Qataris, and Qataris are very interested, and they said, okay, we put in money and let's do it. But all the excitement faded away when we came back because the family said that they don't want to lose control. So they don't believe in partnerships. Pakistan's business structure is very family-controlled structure. We are not willing to bring in institutions.
But how do you lay a concern like that? I mean, how do you really allay a concern like that when somebody is fearful that, somebody might take over?
It is basically a mindset thing. Now an institutional investor is looking for a return and expansion of business. They don't want to take over.
But does it also come down to the fact that, you can have better agreements, which ensures protection of,
I don't
primary
think it
owners?
has anything to do with agreement. It is a mindset that if a big boy comes into my business, right? So my basically ownership might get threatened, So families really don't want to expand. Now, if you run your own business, there's a limitation to that. You need to reach out to the capital markets to expand. So people are hesitant here. I ask you a question. When was the last time a new company got listed on stock exchange? Not in 10 years. People don't want to raise capital. As a matter of fact, indirectly, they buy out their own shares. Expansion, Usama, does not happen like that. You got to get out. That's why Pakistan do not even have one multinational. Look at our neighbors. They are getting global. You got to get the ownership diluted and bring in the best investors.
But do you plan on doing something, reaching out to local businesses out here to sort of change that mindset? Do you have
traditional families, I don't think they will change it.
All right.
But there's a new breed of entrepreneurs emerging. The medium-sized entrepreneurs hungry for expansion. I think the traditional businesses will eventually shrink, like what happened in Japan. At one point in time, every technology in Pakistan was Japanese. Then Japanese started shrinking their global outreach, and they got replaced by China and Korea and others. I think that's what is going to happen in Pakistan in the next 10, 20 years. A new breed of entrepreneurs who are into startups or medium time, they will take over the business, but the families have made enough money which can pay for their several generations, and they are content with it, unfortunately.
Mr. Sharif, you did mention the fact that Chinese are actually interested in, relocating a lot of their investment and manufacturing operations or assembling operations in countries like Pakistan. It also brings to mind also Western corporations, which are also, treading this path of de-risking from China. And that also opens up an opportunity, a lot of commentators say, for countries like Pakistan. But then the question is, how do you then also reach out to, manufacturers from the US or other Western countries to also reassure them that while China is coming over here, we also would want to welcome equal opportunities from countries that are based in the West or corporations that are from the West. Have we done enough on that?
Two parts of your question. First part actually is that COVID has taught the world that basically putting all eggs in one basket is not a good thing. China became the only production hub of the world, and when the value chains of trading and transportation got broken down, the world crumbled. Now they want to diversify and have multiple centers. Okay? But the question here is that when Pakistan is, and most of the centers are in Asia, because Asia has the manpower, Asia has the technology, Asia has the liquidity. But what has happened is, who are we competing with? We are competing with India. We are competing with Cambodia. We are competing with Bangladesh, right? Vietnam is now far ahead of Pakistan in terms of technological developments and, quality. Pakistan at the moment has the highest inflation and interest rate, right? So an investor who comes in, when they raise local money, it is more expensive. That's a fact. Pakistan is still labor intensive, not the mid-level tech savvy labor force which can operate, the global now machines and other things. To me, Pakistan needs to look at two things. We need to pick up our comparative advantage very carefully. What do we offer better than Cambodia and Bangladesh and others? I still think we are much better off in agriculture-based production. But that sector, I ask the question to all my colleagues and friends and businessmen. If you need to open up a sector, where would the money come from? I have a very serious reservation on Pakistan's banking sector. If you need to tomorrow set up a new company, you do not have affordable long-term capital available institutionally. Commercial banks are owned by same families I was mentioning.
But where would that money come from then in that?
It basically, if you go across the globe, every country has set up development banks. They only do project financing. I'll give you an example. We have some joint ventures. You might have heard Saudi Park, Park China. All these companies were supposed to do project financing. You go and open up their balance sheets. Either their money is parked in the stock market or lent to the government. So we need to take that capital out. Risk capital is not there. If I want to take a risk, where is the venture capital? We need to redo the financial market if we need to open up a comparative advantage. There's no bank to help exporters. You know, we go to the same old commercial banks. So we need to look at a raising money. There's a very famous quote, you know, Ashraf Ghani, when he was in Afghanistan, he's an old colleague from the World Bank days. He asked me this question. He said, I think there is a lot of liquidity in Afghanistan. But how do I convert that liquidity into capital? So there is money, but there aren't enough saving products in Pakistan. Where do you put money other than bonds and few deposit schemes? So I think our stock market needs to play a big role. Government needs to encourage private sector to set up agriculture banks, infrastructure banks, SME banks in private space, not in the state control. And that is where incentive will come. If you recall some 40 years back, Pakistan used to have some DFIs. There was NDFCs and PICIC or Industrial Development Bank. Eventually all these got closed down and commercial banking took over. Commercial banking only provides risk-free working capital. It's not project financing. So if Chinese companies want to come here, they will bring some of their own money, but in operating in our environment, they need local capital. So we need to work on local capital formulation in Pakistan as well.
And you spoke of the agricultural sector, but when we actually see it in reality, we haven't seen a lot of value addition being done by the agricultural sector itself. Either there is no capacity, either there's lack of awareness on part of the agricultural producers themselves or the farmers, or even big landowners as well, or perhaps there's very little inclination to innovate or do things differently. How would you advise that, farmers can actually take the lead, do things differently, and this goes for, bigger players in the market? How can they sort of reinvent themselves to actually capture on their strengths?
If I pick up 3 winners in Pakistan, let's say for next 25 years, you cannot do everything, you know. You can't get into an AI-based competition at this point in time, right? To me, the 3 winners in Pakistan, number 1 is agro-based value-added, industry. Our textile, but only in the value addition part, not grey cloth or, very basic selling cotton. Second is emerging technologies and IT. Okay, we have an English-speaking, population, young population, and I think we produce still 30,000 graduates in IT. Some question the quality of graduates, but we can triple them if we want to, and that is where the margins are high. The comparison I have seen from one of the largest IT firms in Pakistan, exporting billions of dollars, that with 10 laptops, you can export the same value which one textile mill will export. Now look at the energy consumption in textile mill and the energy consumption in 10 laptops, okay? So I'm picking winners. So IT would be, and emerging technologies. Lots of technologies are now at the level where Pakistan, even defense production, Pakistan is quite good to partner and take it forward. And my third and final area, which not many people talk, we are somehow, fixation. We have a fixation with manufacturing. We are not looking at services. You can export huge amount of services. 80% of the rich country's population average age is 60. So there's a huge demand for nursing services, hospitality services, transportation services. We need to work on services. What the services we offer, 60% of my economy today is services. But what are those services, by the way? Any idea? Real estate, restaurants, okay, some financial services, ground transport. My question, which one of this activity generates jobs and bring in foreign exchange? That's what we need, the change in policy.
So perhaps tourism and medical tourism would be something that you would advise doing?
As long as you bring in people who bring in dollars here, you know. But real estate, that has become a very powerful sector over the years. Lots of black money got parked there, right? Who makes money? The broker, right? Who does? The more deals are done, the more commission is earned. Does it contribute to taxation? No. Does it create jobs? No. Does it bring in foreign exchange? Hardly. So we got to see our priorities. In industry, I give examples. We have been protecting auto industry for years. We have been protecting sugar industry for years. How much foreign exchange these industries earn? Are they competitive? Today, I can buy cheaper sugar from Latin America with shipment cost to Pakistan than what we are producing. So we are not competitive there. So why are we nurturing all these things? There's a very famous study that in order to bring structural shift, some of the things which are not your winners need to die. Eventually, tactfully, but you need to take out incentives and money from those. And there is a term in economics, you do the financial repression, you shift resources to your winners. That's what East Asia did. They picked up winners and exported everything.
Now, shifting resources to winners, you spoke of SIFC, the Special Investment
Facilitation Council.
Facilitation Council, yes. Now, let's actually discuss its role. How would you rate it in terms of its success in having attracted foreign investment so far?
It's too early. There's no foreign investment so far under SIFC. But let me explain a little bit that how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing, first of all, in a fragmented state structure, that a coordinated effort is being done to cut down the red tape. I fully support that up to that level. Also, basically, trying to give some priorities and transactions so that government, which is short of cash, they can get some cash, right? So SIFC to me is actually trying to do few large-scale transactions by cutting down red tape, but my advice is don't cut down the rule of the land. You need to be transparent and you need to be competitive so that tomorrow when people look at it, and you cannot give advantage to one investor over the other. They need to be
It's quite interesting you're making a mention of that, because let me quote what actually Dawn reported yesterday. It said that the IMF has advised against creating a preferred group of investors under SIFC and to ensure transparency and accountability in business deals. After all, the IMF seems concerned, but the question is, why did the IMF make those demands in the first place, and was it satisfied after a briefing that came from Pakistani counterparts or negotiators?
I think IMF, any international investor or institution will raise the same concern. That do we have a level playing field for all, or are you doing deals in a preferred manner with somebody? And we should avoid that if tomorrow we need to attract investment here. Second part is even more interested, that are you doing it transparently? One is preference, one is so haste, as I said earlier, is not the answer. You need to do proper diligence and delegate. SIFC, the people who are members of SIFC, they have a 24/7 job somewhere else. Expecting them to do these commercial transactions is not realistic. Now, that is where I'm saying that you need to bring some institution under SIFC which can attract professionals to do deals. Then it will be successful. Otherwise, you might have some G2G deals, but the private large investors will very carefully watch that, tomorrow somebody can object to my transaction. Tomorrow there could be a political risk to it. Tomorrow I can be dragged to the court. Although SIFC's, law under the BOI exempts them from NAB and courts and others. But again, as a citizen, anybody can have a writ. How about media? We are a very divided society. So I think they need to set up professional mechanism to take it forward and cut down the older things. There is duplication. If there is an SIFC, I think BOI and SIFC should merge. They are doing the same job, My advice to them would be that Privatization Commission, Board of Investment and China's investments, these should be three bodies, and SIFC becomes like a board, oversees it. Put managing directors from market, give them targets, let them do. If you keep on using the same, what the example is, keep on putting more water in the leaky bucket of bureaucracy, you might get stuck into things which you unintentionally into the deals. So I think we need to now bring few world-class institutions which inspire confidence that, everything is not political.
So what you're suggesting is we need to actually do away with parallel silos and have a more synergetic,
we need
institutional
one body.
approach.
Your question of investors.
Yeah.
If SIFC is the premier body, then let's just keep it and put, everything under it. Right. Rather than having a parallel Ministry of Privatization and, industry and Board of Investment. So these economic houses need to coordinate under one oversight. That's what I'm saying.
Or else it would be a recipe for failure.
No, else it will again get into same frustrations of investors which have been happening
which
before.
need to be avoided.
I give you examples. For instance, I had the privilege of, having one-to-one discussion with Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. And I asked this question to him. And he's a thoughtful man. He basically said that what he did was on his state-owned enterprises and real estate assets. You must have heard the name Petronas.
Yeah.
So he created a real estate company by the name of, Petronas. And Petronas basically it became a real estate trust run by independent professionals. They made so much money in 9 years that they actually built the capital Putrajaya for him free of cost. That's what I'm saying, that state is sitting on huge amount of properties. Rather than making housing societies, give it to people who can commercially develop these, and they know how to do it. They will bring in international investors, capital markets, institutions, pension funds, into the game. That is what state lacks. And I think SIFC should look for this kind of professionalism to demonstrate. They should ensure timely decision making in the government. But making these transactions, it's not state's job. That's my intention.
Right. Now, let me come to my last two questions. And this is basically about, IMF. And IMF and Pakistan have actually reached another round of staff level agreement. But then at the same time, there was a recent statement that came out by Kristalina Georgieva, who was speaking to Deutsche Welle, and she said that Pakistan should do at least two things. First, those making good money in the public or private sector should be contributing to the economy. And then she said, moving subsidies only towards the people who actually need it. But so far what we've seen is headway and progress only in the opposite direction. How much serious progress do you really think there will be in the months and weeks to come in these two areas?
I think Pakistan, again, I would say that somebody who has worked in international institutions, it's a shame that we have gone to IMF 23 times. Okay? No country develops in a fund program because fund program is a stabilization program. Now, Kristalina is my former colleague in the World Bank. I know her thinking. In fact, I brought her to Pakistan a few years back. My take is that she can only advise. Our history is that we don't complete the IMF programs we do it for a year or year and a half. When we have sufficient reserves to have at least a year or two stability, we part ways and go back to our old patronage system. Kristalina is challenging that guys, you got to have far more wider tax net rather than taxing the people who are already paying.
Yep.
You should have redistributive arrangement of taxation to the people who deserve public money, right? And she's saying that you have been doing patronage through exemptions and protection to too many people who don't deserve it, right? But that's where, Usama, is the elite bargain comes in. If the elites have decided to keep on benefiting each other and extracting money from people, this will not change and will continue going to IMF again and again and again. But if elites decide that we need to change a few things now and be a respectable, progressive country and join emerging Asia, then they need to now stop doing these things and basically tax, for instance, tax your constituencies. What stops you? You know, whoever is making income should be taxed. This is a country which is blessed with a very strong NADRA database. It's not that you are not documented, okay? You should tax the traders if they are making money. You should tax the agriculturalists if they are making money. If they're in losses, why make differentiation and exemptions to certain constituencies which are making money from the same economy? And that is what I call extraction. It's a post-colonial extractive mindset. You take money from the same taxpayer and the poor and redistribute among themselves.
But the question is, can we bring about that paradigm shift? Isn't it
That's
about
the
the
bargain
time?
I'm saying.
But isn't it about the time that we really should be doing it?
My honest judgment, it should have been done yesterday. Maybe coerced. But my understanding is what I see, there will be a transition of at least 5 to 10 years. And under that, the only answer is that you delegate certain economic priorities to professional institutions, take it away from politics. I don't think our political parties are ready, or they have the think tanks and within the party thinking about progressive economic policy.
But mostly
they are about projects, they are about transactions.
But what about the progress in these two areas? You know, giving subsidies to people who actually deserve it, and then also sort of expanding the base of the tax net
It's
itself.
gradually going down, but unfortunately going down under international institutional pressure, not the people demand. We need to connect what people need. You know, at this point in time, I deeply worry about unemployment. It's a 2% growth, which cannot accommodate a young population. I deeply worry about a potential civil unrest because of an ethnically divided, you know, fractured society. I deeply worry about the frustrations between haves and have-nots, which can lead to, you see, petty crime keeps on rising. And I have seen in multiple countries of Africa and other places that, you know, petty crime makes your life very insecure. Now, Pakistan has the potential to stand up. I do not believe on people who say that, you know, this model has failed or something. The endowment is there. Pakistan has a problem of a liquidity crisis. Pakistan still has assets to leverage and make money. But for that, you need to change the 35, 40-year-old policy mindset, which is based on benefiting the few and not inclusive to the others.
And my last question now, and this is about what Pakistan actually did something last year. And this was based on the efforts to, you know, bring about some kind of an economic stimulus to the floods that Pakistan actually suffered, you know, as a consequence of monsoon rains. And so the government was able to, you know, as a result of its exercise, was able to raise about, you know, commitments, you know, near the sum of $9 to $10 billion worth of pledges. What kind of headway have you really seen towards that end? Has there been any kind of significant progress on that level, although the amount was to come, you know, in next few years, but has any progress finally started to roll out?
Somehow we are living in an old school mindset, which is still running outside, looking for aid and commitments for our own disasters. Our challenge is that climate change is one of the biggest threat to our livelihoods and lifestyles in Pakistan, right? We keep on running to the West for giving us free money. And frankly, we don't get any because there isn't much free money left for us. As long as you were a geopolitical partner, there was some, sympathy. Frankly, the 11 billion, commitments, that meant nothing to me because I don't think even a billion came. And whatever was committed, it was already programmed under the multilateral programs for Pakistan. Mostly loans, no grants. Same thing we did. I might, keep on annoying some of my dear friends. We took the approach of creating a loss and damage fund in the last COP27. Meaning the Western countries are polluting and we are suffering, so you pay damages to us. That fund perhaps did not even get $100 till today because there's no free money available in the market. I would again and again say, now for floods, how much local resource mobilization we did. And I go back to Christina's question. If our elite had put in $1 billion, then you go to the world that I have raised this, you match it. World would respect you, that you are owning problem. We take our problem to the world without taking any action at our home. I think it's time. There's a lot of money in Pakistan for development. Government reads for climate change. Even if you raise $100 million from local financial system, I can make it 10 times bigger because people would say, aha, they are doing it themselves. But when you keep on asking for aid and free money and free loans, I don't think it has taken us anywhere. And that's my answer to floods. Population has suffered. Their houses have not been rebuilt, all of them. Their livelihoods have not been restored. Their children are out of school. And now there might be, God forbids, another shock of drought or floods again. We need to own these people internally first. I think running to the West, which has its own troubles, again and again for aid and free money is not Pakistan's future.
So everything now starts at home by putting our house in order.
Everything should start at home because people respect you. If you keep on begging, people don't respect you. That's what I'm saying.
By putting the house in order.
Absolutely.
On this note, Mr. Haroon Sharif, thank you so very much for being part of today's conversation on InferTalks.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for staying with us through this conversation with Mr. Haroon Sharif on InferTalks. Our team works very hard to make this work possible, and it would mean the world to us if you could like and share our content to show your support. And if you'd like to stay informed on upcoming podcasts and other work, please hit the bell icon.